Welcome to Strip Cover Lit, where we wrangle the bigger picture out of literature. I am Adrian Fort.
And I'm Dalton Gentry.
And we are here for a review. Dalton, tell them what we're reviewing this time.
We've got another short story here. This is Amy Tan, Two Kinds. Yeah, and
we chose this because Dalton is a huge Amy Tan fan.
I fucking hate Amy Tan, man.
So, do you have a rundown for the piece real quick?
Okay, in its bare bones simplicity here, we see an Asian mother raising her daughter and basically pressuring her to be as good as she could be. Trying to get her new things. She wants her to have that the genius, the prodigy ideology. Trying to figure out what she is best skilled at and introducing her to new things. The daughter rebels against it. She doesn't like it. They end up doing piano lessons. The daughter learns to play the piano very poorly. Because her piano instructor is deaf. There's a performance. It doesn't go well. We fast forward. The mother has passed on. And the daughter realizes what she gave her. Yeah.
So, 3 good things, 3 bad things, quotes, literary analysis, rating, and recommendation. 3 good things. Dalton, what have you got?
Okay, this is a good glimpse into a culture that is not our own. This is not something I've ever experienced growing up with. My parents didn't pressure me to be a genius, so it was good to get a different feel of things. There's some good pain and some good hurt buried into this. And drawing it out, when you find it, it makes for some very poignant moments. It really does. And finally, the idea of duality in the end of this really plays out well.
Okay.
There's one side each story.
Yeah. In fact, I think there is a much better title for this piece than Two Kinds.
Okay.
Number 1, for my 3 good things, bittersweet is the best sweet. Number 2, you can reach out and touch this story. It's so real.
Okay.
Am I wrong about that?
Maybe that's one of the reasons I don't like it.
Okay. And 3, this is a very smooth read.
Okay.
There's not much hitch in the get-up.
It is, and I'm going to say that's a bad thing.
Okay. 3 bad things. What do we get there?
The language in this is almost too simple and too smooth. There's not a lot of quotable moments in this. It just, to me, it's going to move right into my second point here. This is just boring to me. Okay. This piece, and I tried to explain this, it doesn't feel like a literary story to me. This reads very much like just a nonfiction snippet. I just want so much more from this.
Okay.
And finally, didn't we all just see that ending coming?
Oh, yeah.
That fizzled.
Yeah. Number 1 for me for 3 bad things, there is a cheap trick in this text.
Okay.
You 90% have to like your protagonist, or your protagonist has to be so disgusting that you can't look away from them, right? Both of those work. This is neither of those.
Okay.
This protagonist is a little asshole.
Fair.
But it's a little girl. That's a cheap trick. You can't hate little girls, right?
All right.
So I think that what happens there is your expectations get underridden instead of overridden.
Okay.
And you go with instinct. And the instinct is you can't hate little girls.
Okay.
Number 2, I think there is a bit of on the nose happening here.
Okay.
Does it make you uncomfortable?
It really does. I'm glad we could have this moment, though. A little bit of nose poking happening here. All right, moving on with this. You're going to put an eye out.
All right. 3, that title. The title sucks, and I'll get to that.
Okay. All right.
Do you have quotes?
I do have a couple here. This is from Literature, a Portable Anthology, 2nd edition, which is a wonderful, wonderful collection of stories about it. From 406. But sometimes the prodigy in me became impatient. If you don't hurry up and get me out of here, I'm disappearing for good, it warned. And then you'll always be nothing. I think that kind of sums up this piece in a bit of a nutshell here. And maybe one that you're going to agree with more because it introduces Mr. Chong, the piano instructor. And then he would play the C scale a few times, a simple chord, and then, as if inspired by an old unreachable itch, he gradually added more notes and running trills and a pounding bass, until the music was really something quite grand. That's a beautiful moment. It is. And I enjoyed that part. Adrian?
I have a little bit more extensive quotes here. And I think that this plays into the language being simpler.
Okay.
That extended quotes are where you get moments that are good as opposed to little snippets.
Okay.
Like Hemingway has short declarative sentences that you're not going to forget.
All right.
There's no unforgettable sentences here. There are unforgettable moments for me.
Yes.
There are moments that I really like. But as far as just the language, not so much. This from 407 of this book. I began to cry. Such a sad, ugly girl. I made high-pitched noises like a crazed animal trying to scratch out the face in the mirror. And then I saw what seemed to be the prodigy side of me, because I had never seen that face before. I looked at my own reflection, blinking so I could see more clearly. The girl staring back at me was angry, powerful. This girl and I were the same. I had new thoughts, willful thoughts, or rather thoughts filled with lots of won'ts. I won't let her change me, I promised myself. I won't be what I'm not. So now, on nights when my mother presented her tests, I performed listlessly, my head propped up on one arm. I pretended to be bored, and I was. I got so bored I started counting the bellows of the foghorns out on the bay while my mother drilled me in other areas. The sound was comforting and reminded me of the cow jumping over the moon. And the next day I played a game with myself, seeing if my mother would give up on me before 8 bellows. After a while, I usually counted only 1, maybe 2 bellows at most. At last, she was beginning to give up hope.
Okay.
That is a bittersweet thing, huh?
Okay.
And then 410 and 411. As I started to play, it was so beautiful. I was so caught up in how lovely I looked that at first I didn't worry about how I would sound. So it was a surprise to me when I hit the first wrong note and I realized something didn't sound quite right. And then I hit another, and another followed that. A chill started at the top of my head and began to trickle down, yet I couldn't stop playing, as though my hands were bewitched. I kept thinking my fingers would adjust themselves back like a train switching to the right track. I played this strange jumble through 2 repeats, the sour notes staying with me all the way to the end. When I stood up, I discovered my legs were shaking. Maybe I had just been nervous, and the audience, like old Chong, had seen me go through the right motions, and had not heard anything at all. I swept my right foot out, went down on my knee, looked up, and smiled. The room was quiet, except for old Chong, who was beaming and shouting, "Bravo, bravo, well done." But then I saw my mother's face, her stricken face. The audience clapped weakly, and as I walked back to my chair, my whole face quivering, as I tried not to cry, I heard a little boy whisper loudly to his mother, "That was awful." And then the mother whispered back, "Well, she certainly tried."
I think that's really the paramount moment of this piece.
Well, and it's got 2 callbacks to earlier in the story.
Okay.
There is the "well, she certainly tried" moment,
Yep.
which calls back to someone trying to be a prodigy earlier in the story. And it's got old Chong singing "Bravo, bravo, well done," because he can't hear her playing.
Yes.
He's just going off what she looks like when she's playing.
And looked damn good, but
Yeah.
it did not sound good.
Looks like she's doing right.
I've got one more very quick quote here that I
Oh,
think is
did I
really
cut
good
you
for this
off?
piece. No, absolutely
Okay.
not. I just remembered it. I'm like, well, I'll read that one as well. For unlike my mother, I did not believe I could be anything I wanted to be. I could only be me. That's a decent little quote. It's
Yeah,
not
it's a
bad.
nice one. It's a
It's
nice
not
quote.
bad. What would you like to get into with this here? Anything in particular you want to start with?
This opening paragraph, just real quick, just to get it out of the way because it's a non sequitur. My mother believed you could be anything you wanted to be in America. You could open a restaurant, you could work for the government and get good retirement, you could buy a house with almost no money down, you could become rich, you could become instantly famous. That is the opening line to the story about a woman who was a Chinese immigrant and her daughter.
Yes.
One of my best friends is a Chinese immigrant.
Okay.
Her first job in the United States was working for a family-owned restaurant.
Okay.
She now works for the government.
Okay.
She speaks about her retirement when she never did before.
Okay.
And she just bought a house that she's always talking about how she wished she put more money down.
Okay.
Holy moly, this is a real story.
Okay, so it's on the head here,
Yeah.
right on the nose. Thank you. Thank you. There is a lot of comments here on that American dream mentality. Because this is an immigrant family, and we're led to believe that the mother was the first generation to come to America. Because she had to leave a lot behind. That's mentioned. There's a very dark moment there as well, if you catch that. But that is the American dream. And in reality, you want to think that the mother's being too hard on her. She's being that helicopter parent that's just pushing the daughter too hard, and that's why the daughter rebels.
If you're seeing this from the daughter's perspective, right?
Yes. But when you look at it, this mother's really just trying to make sure the daughter gets the most out of life.
Right. And
here are all the opportunities that I never had growing up. I'm presenting them to you. Why aren't you capitalizing on them?
And in fact, recently we had a talk on one of our videos about business, opening a business,
Yeah.
like wanting to do a bar and things like that. We had someone from Germany who commented and said, you can't do that in Germany.
It's not a thing.
Yeah, it's
Doesn't
not a
work
thing.
like that.
No one gets credit in Germany.
Okay.
So it's just interesting to see this is the land of opportunity, you know? And on that note, on this first page of this story, we have the little girl getting a haircut so that she looks like Shirley Temple.
Shirley Temple.
And I almost said Shirley Jackson. And the haircut goes wrong.
Yes.
And we get this quote about the mother. She lamented as if I had done this on purpose. That type of lamentation that makes anyone around feel guilty is this mother trying so hard.
Okay.
Right? That's what's happening here. She's trying so hard to provide for her daughter, and it doesn't go. She doesn't have a lot of money. We
Correct.
get many hints throughout this that
Yes.
there's not a lot of money in this family. And so when I pay for a haircut, and even that doesn't go right, I am so upset that everyone around feels guilty. Like that is heartbreaking from the mother's perspective, hard to see from the child's perspective, right? Because it feels like accusation.
There's a lot of good duality in this piece, there really is. And the ending really summarizes that duality where she sees the two different pages of music that she could have chose from.
Pleading child and perfectly contented.
Yes,
again,
thank you.
right
God
here.
damn it.
Right here.
God damn it. But even that there, with the haircut, that is a good thing of duality here because we have two different cultures clashing here. We have a very traditional Asian mother, you would think almost the stereotypical Asian mother, and a daughter who is born American, who is presented with all these opportunities but doesn't want them, just wants to get by, wants to schluff, and the mother who is obviously come from a difficult life and wants to give her daughter everything she never had, which is a beautiful thing, it is. But sometimes that comes off a little crass.
Well, I think a lot of what's going on here is it's not necessarily that this daughter does not want that. It is presented at the end of the story as she's made something of herself, right?
Well, you'd imagine, yes.
But what is happening is the mother is at a stage in life where all of this opportunity is hitting like tidal waves.
Yeah.
And she's thinking, we've got to swim.
It's overwhelming, I'd imagine.
The daughter's never known any other world. So she knows that the ocean's always going to be there.
Okay.
That's all she knows, that the ocean's always going to be there. But she's in grade school, middle school area, something like that.
You would assume.
She doesn't want to do it right now.
Okay.
Right? For me, that's what's going on. And what this is, to me, is a struggle between be me versus be great. Right? And what is the duality there? Can you be great at being you?
Yeah. Anybody can be great at being themselves.
What does that mean?
That's more of an intrinsic thing.
So one of the people that I really value in the world is Elon Musk.
Okay.
If he was just great at being Elon Musk, does that mean he's the great businessman that he is? Does that mean he's the great inventor that he is? Does that mean that he is the great entrepreneur that he is? Or does it just mean that he wakes up every morning thinking, God damn, I'm Elon Musk? Would he be where he is if he stopped at being me?
Okay.
So there is a little extra drive. So are all of the people who have the drive to be great, is it in them to have that drive? So them being great is just them really striking on being them.
It's an interesting question. Where does greatness come from, and where does I'm trying to think of the good word I want here.
Mediocrity?
Maybe.
Existing?
How do you formulate results? Is it just simply pressure, time, commitment, or are some people destined to just produce better results because they just have that inherent gift in them? That is an interesting question. Good old philosophical question here. I'm not sure I could give you an answer to that, though.
But I think that's a lot of what this piece is playing with.
Yes, and that's fine. Now, there are some moments in here that we get just a good taste of darkness when we get a little bit about the mother's past. Did you catch that part there?
Yeah, she's lost children, she's lost a husband.
In an explosive argument, and I could sense her anger rising to its breaking point. I wanted to spill it over. And that's when I remembered the babies she had lost in China, the ones we never talked about. Then I wish I'd never been born, I shouted. I wish I were dead, like them. That stops the mother. That shuts her down. That was over the line there. And that little moment there, that emotional just outburst, that adds something to this. That's good. Because we no longer, that is the turn where we no longer see this mother as pressing. We no longer see this mother as forcing her daughter into something she doesn't want. We have sympathy for the mother. because she's really trying, man. She wants to give this child a better life. A life she couldn't give other children.
Yeah, and I think this is an awful question to have to ask.
Okay.
Do you know any women who have lost children?
I do.
They never stop feeling guilty for it, do they?
It's a thing. It is.
Yeah, it's not just feeling bad or it's not feeling bad about the situation, and it's not missing the child. Everyone that I know that has lost a child, there's always a feeling of guilt involved.
Okay.
As if it was their fault. So when this little girl pipes up and says, "I wish I was dead like them," it's her saying, "I wish I was your fault like they are."
Yeah.
It wasn't her saying, "Let me grasp this opportunity which you have provided," which you've risked life and limb to provide, right?
Okay.
It is someone saying, "You screwed up. That's why I'm your only daughter.
Okay.
You screwed up, and I wish you'd screw up again."
Okay. Like I said, I think that's a very powerful moment in this piece. If we want to draw something from it, that's a good moment.
Right. And I think that the daughter doesn't know she's communicating that there.
No,
right?
no.
She just knows
the
that
daughter's just in that rage, and she knows that's the button I can push. That's
Right.
the button. She doesn't understand the depth of that.
Right.
Absolutely. Anything else you want to talk about here?
I think I've got a better title for this piece.
What do you got? What would you name this piece?
I would name this piece Scratched Up.
Okay. Like
So-
the piano?
Well,
The bench, I think it was?
like the piano bench was scratched up.
Okay.
But also, that excerpt that I read where the girl was looking in the mirror and wished she could scratch her face off.
Okay.
So not only does that pop up twice in the story, scratched up, but it represents both kinds of daughter, doesn't it?
Okay.
The one filled with rage, who's being me, that this daughter's trying to turn into, and the piano seat was scratched up, and that's what her mother wants her to be, is that good, obedient daughter who learns a skill.
Okay.
But two kinds simply illuminates that there are two kinds of daughter, which is a line spoken by the mother in here. There's two kinds of daughter, the daughter that does what she wants and the daughter that's obedient, and only one gets to live here, right?
Okay.
I don't think that two kinds is a very strong title.
Okay. That does come back to play a little bit right at the end, where after the mother has passed away, the daughter, who we would assume now has a bit of money behind her, she has become successful, pays to have the piano tuned. And she goes back and, she looks at the old sheet music that she learned to play the Pleading Child off of.
Yeah.
And on the Adrian Fort kissing page is something that says perfectly contented. Get your finger away from my nose, man. So I don't like the ending. I don't. You knew the mother was going to die and the daughter was going to go back. You saw it coming.
Yeah.
And even if you add in this cheesy two kinds of the page thing, no, it doesn't work for me. It fizzled. I'm not crazy about it.
Yeah, so I had written down that her learning to play the piece Pleading Child was on the nose before I knew that Perfectly Contented was on the kissing page.
Yeah.
Right? So that is so telestrated, right? That it like you understand why it's there, but you sort of wish it wasn't.
Yeah.
That's why I think...
It seems heavy-handed.
Yeah, it's very heavy-handed. That's why if you point to something like Scratched Up, A, it puts motion in your title.
Okay.
B, it points to two symbols in the literature as opposed to simply an argument made in the text itself.
Oh, rewriting Amy Tan was
Yeah.
lit.
The last thing I really have to talk about is Old Man Chong.
Okay.
As I understand it, and this may be way off the mark, so someone is more than welcome to correct me in the comments section. As I understand it, Chong, Chong, is not a particularly authentic Chinese name.
Okay.
It's not quite an Ellis Island name, but from what I understand it is a misrepresentation of Zhong. Zhong would be that name.
Okay.
So when Old Man Chong happens in the text, and he's a very stereotypical character, isn't he?
Oh, yeah.
Lives with his mother, which when white people like to stereotype everyone but white people as always living with their family, right?
Yeah.
So that's one thing, stereotype there. He's deaf. The deaf old Chinese man, that's a stereotype.
Okay.
Very eccentric, stereotype. very calculated, stereotype, right? So he's all of these stereotypical things. And if I am correct about this, that Chong is not a particularly authentic Chinese name, who are going to be the people reading this that see that?
Those who know that.
Those who know that.
Okay.
Probably people within the culture.
Okay.
More than likely people within, or with some connection to the Chinese culture that understand this isn't real.
Okay.
This person isn't real. This sticks out like a sore thumb for a reason. So that would be a wonderful double-pronged character in the text.
Now, we mentioned a little bit, we sometimes talk briefly about the text. It's usually me showing up and be like, did you read the Amy Tan? Because it was awful. Worst thing I've ever read. Adrian always has to chime in. He's like, I really liked Chong. Old Man Chong was like, that was it for me. That was good.
Moment where he can't hear, so he's just watching her go to work on stage.
Okay.
And her appearance is what she's most interested in anyway. So he's just clapping along. That is a gorgeous moment.
Okay.
Because you know that character can't hear anyway.
Okay.
You know what's going on there.
We could even argue she was successful in doing what she wanted. She gave the outward appearance that she was doing this. She was the
went
genius.
to town.
But on the inside, man, those notes were off.
Yeah.
Anyway, what would you rate this particular story here? 2
I
kinds.
would give this 86 old Chongs out of 100.
Okay, I went a little lower. I gave it 82 off-key notes. It just didn't work for me. I don't like it.
But it's a solid story. You can admit that
It's a
much.
story. It is. I would give this slightly above average.
Don't tell me that I saw on your page what you're recommending for this.
Yep.
Go ahead.
If you like this terrible story, you might as well just read the Joy Luck Club. Might as well. I believe this is actually a snippet from that.
All the lazy things you've done.
If you enjoy this, why don't you read the entire book? Because I believe this is a snippet from that book.
Okay. I'm going to read my recommendation.
Okay.
My recommendation is a poem by Theodore Rothke called My Papa's Waltz.
Okay.
The whiskey on your breath could make a small boy dizzy, but I hung on like death. Such waltzing was not easy. We romped until the pans slid from the kitchen shelf. My mother's countenance could not unfrown itself. The hand that held my wrist was battered on one knuckle. At every step you missed, my right ear scraped a buckle. You beat time on my head with a palm caked hard by dirt, then waltzed me off to bed, still clinging to your shirt. I think that is that double-pronged, is this an abusive relationship, is this a loving relationship,
Okay.
from an American boy as this is from a Chinese immigrant girl.
Okay.
So I think I'm pretty proud of my recommendation.
Well, one of us had to go above and beyond. Somebody always has to underachieve. Anyway, if you like this kind of thing, make sure you hit the subscribe button down below. We do all kinds of short story reviews, novel reviews, poem reviews, and give this video a like as well because I had to endure through it. Adrian, anything?
We hope to see you here for the next review we do on Strip Cover Lit.